Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday. It's our last day here, and we've gone to see so many different things. As you can see, it's daytime. I wasn't able to do my debrief last night because my brain was a little fried and I was definitely brain fogging. Yesterday was a day where things like words coming out of my mouth was not happening. So I wanted to give you a follow-up and some more information on the two other sessions I did attend. And the first one we did together with Tiffany, and Kenny gave you some highlights. And this one was from two different rheumatologists, and it was Cardiovascular Rheumatology, lessons learned from targeting inflammation to modulate, so control the cardiovascular risk. And this first rheumatologist was really key on pointing out some very interesting things. The first thing she was talking about was atherosclerosis. So that is part of cardiovascular disease, and that's the plaque that shows up in your vessels. And she was talking about that and autoimmunity. So there's definitely a growing relationship, and they even questioned is our atherosclerosis, so cardiovascular disease, is it actually an autoimmune disease itself? What an interesting question, huh? They talked about the different things. So the plaque, the calcium that kind of forms inside your vessel to block the blood flows from flowing quite so easily. The thrombosis formation, so not being able to clot so well. The elasticity, so the flexibility of your vessels, whether it's arteries or veins and things like that, versus getting to be more hardened and not doing so well. Is it more than just a relationship? Good question. The next question, again, like she said, is it actually going to be considered a autoimmune disease at some point? Because there's so many shared pathways and the mechanisms of how they're treated and things like that. Because as you'll hear me say, they've been looking at how they're treating cardiovascular disease, colchicine, as well as they're using TNF inhibitors, which are the same drugs that they treat our diseases for. So that's an interesting crossover. They're using methotrexate, and they were seeing some promise with that. And also the glucocorticoids like the prednisones and the steroid shots that we often hear about. So you'll hear my voice is a little froggy. We were up late last night and we had a lot of fun catching up with friends, but I think my voice had it over these couple days. So excuse my voice, but we were talking about, let me get to the actual take-home points, because I think that summed a lot of this up. First, we need to make sure that we're recognizing the cardiovascular risk that are a part of our diseases. And there's a lot of assessment tools out there. We need to make sure that our rheumatologists are actually looking at the crossover, managing the known cardiovascular risks, using NSAIDs. So those are things like our Motrin and over-the-counter Celebrex, those type of things that are taking the inflammation out of our bodies. Using those with more caution, because they tend to cause really higher than they ever imagined risks to our cardiovascular system and having cardiovascular events. Using corticosteroids at the lowest dose and for the shortest amount of time possible. I'm speaking from experience. I've been on steroids since 13 years old. So I've been on steroids. I'm down to a smaller dose. I'm on 4 milligrams, but it's amazing, something that is cheap, but how effective it is, but how much damage can happen from that. So the overall piece of this message was making sure we're keeping tight control on our disease activity, because the inflammation is not good for our hearts. So that was the overall message of that session. I'm going to try to keep skipping ahead because I have another session I want to talk about as well. Let's see. I'm so sorry. I'm just flipping through my slides quick because there were so many of them. But the one other speaker we had was definitely talking about inflammation is definitely the center of cardiovascular disease in our autoimmune populations. They are using low-dose colchicine because, as I said in Tiffany's video, that it is now FDA approved as of June of 2023. And there are large size of there's a large population of patients like us that are doing so well with having colchicine added. The only caution is they've got to really keep track of drug interactions and also look at the counterindications and looking at our blood work for our liver and our kidney health. Good things to keep track of. And the next session I wanted to go into was about diet. It was optimizing diet to improve outcomes in rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. So what are the evidence? So she talked a lot about different studies. One study in particular was the Mediterranean diet, which many of us know. It is using fruits, vegetables, olive oils, legumes, low-fat dairy, lean poultry, fish, things like that, and limiting the sugar and red meats and processed foods. So they did Mediterranean diet versus a regular diet and had people do it for 12 days. And the outcomes were incredible. There was a lot of weight loss, and there was a huge number of as you've heard us talk about, the DAS28. So that's a joint count. So when we go to our rheumatologist, they do a joint count to see what is inflamed. Greater reduction in the joint count than they ever expected. So I thought that was very interesting. They talked about teaching Mediterranean cooking classes versus people just learning about it. So just reading about it versus teaching them. And this study was in 2007. And the overall conclusion was that a lot of people dropped out of this because they found it difficult and didn't have the time to be doing cooking and things like that. So they didn't see a real positive correlation in that one. But I thought it was still, again, interesting to see. But the vegan and a gluten-free diet, so that is no animal products, so no butter, no fish, pork, tuna, any of those type of things, and just a fruit, vegetable, and incorporating it also being gluten-free. So they used RA patients who were doing well, and they also went against a well-balanced diet. And a lot of people had difficulty doing a vegan diet. It wasn't really their particular choice because, again, you want to use food and you've got to enjoy your food. There's another study that I want to touch base on in a little bit, so stay tuned for a few on that one. And I'm going to continue on another video, so stay tuned.